Right. I got to look at myself on my phone because I don't know if it's working or not. Oh, I think it's working. So, chapter 2. So, this year I thought I'd be more fancy, so I bought this sequin thing from a charity shop. And it was quite funny because she's like, "Oh, you're going somewhere fancy?" I said, "No, I'm just coming out of deep depression." And she went, "Oh." I said, "I left the house for 3 weeks." So she, as I'm beginning to feel better and buying myself sparkles, I think I spiraled her into some sort of madness. And look at the state of me. That's my new look. I said Frida Kahlo, and then I said, "Oh, Frida Car Wash," and then Mark said, "Fruda Car Wash." He's over there. So tonight on the Crafting Eilish channel, don't forget, Mark is doing, well, it might not be tonight because you won't be watching it then. Mark is doing his Epstein darkness talk. So let's do chapter 2 and just get on with it, shall we? Right, okay. Might do chapter 2 and 3 actually, if you're lucky, or unlucky. Right, here we go. I don't even know if you can hear me. Chapter 2 and maybe chapter 3. She realised that chapter 1 would probably need completely changing at some point because the bloke on the TV told her that it had to be the best one and said something about first drafts. It could quite easily be the best one at the moment due to it being the only one. Thinking about it, what if it was always the best one and none of the others were better? That would be rubbish. No pressure then. She read chapter 1 to youngest son all covered in glue. He didn't get it, but he listened intently and like 13-year-old back from the cinema, who would have got it if he had taken his earphones out. After breakfasting, that's quite a difficult word to say, didn't realise until now. Until breakfasting on a chocolate slim fast, she counted having these even though it was Christmas and was usually accompanied by a trifle or cheese and biscuits because it made her feel less guilty. And checking the depression forum, she felt a sudden responsibility to check that she hadn't sent anyone into a downward suicidal spiral accidentally due to some well-meant advice she had posted whilst being on a writer's euphoric high. She sat down with an un-Christmassy blanket on her lap, watching a Christmassy edition of Winnie the Pooh next to an un-Christmassy Christmas tree. The dog snuggled up next to her, which was quite useful as he doubled up as a left armrest. She had used the last unmatching cushion for her right arm and was having difficulties in the comfortable department until the dog arrived. The kids were still in bed, result, and Winnie the Pooh wasn't that interesting, so no problems in the concentration department. She wondered if she should have used the word department twice so close together, then decided that if she mentioned the fact that she had at least wondered about it in her book, the more literate of reader would pick up on the fact that she had at least noticed. She was then in a quandary due to realising that she had just informed the less literate of readers, probably her mum, that she had used the word department twice, and there would be a problem with it. Never mind. That little problem had afforded her a whole small paragraph. Would bite-sized paragraph have been more all 3? She then pondered on how many of her words awarded her a red zigzag from the word processor. She looked at the time in the bottom right of the laptop, 10:48 a.m. At this rate, she may even accomplish more than 1,000 words today. Then she remembered that the kids still had to get up, and that usually put pay to most activities which needed intense concentration. Oh well, a little go on the Wii Fit may be just what she needed to feed the brain. Only the less active of activities, of course. Youngest son, covered in glue, nearly broke his neck juggling on a virtual trampoline yesterday. She started to hear "Piglet, Piglet," much to her annoyance. Apparently, Piglet was lost and the rest of them were looking for him in the rain. Oh no, she thought, it's getting interesting. Man, that rabbit is bossy. Then she had another quandary. Would mentioning some of the above mean she wouldn't be able to get her book published? Was it plagiarism? Bloody typical. She kept it in just in case. Her publisher would know about that sort of stuff. Publisher? Where'd you get one of those from? The internet. After a quick reread, she decided that all was well and that she probably wouldn't do a first draft after all. It's so irritating when your left armrest decides to get up and walk around. It's even more irritating when you have an empty bottle of chocolate Slim Fast and the last chocolate on the unchristmassy Christmas tree in your eyesight at the same time. After another 10 minutes of imagining what to wear when being interviewed by Fern and Philip, she was interrupted by contains scenes of surgical procedures. Phew, she quickly grabbed the clicker and turned it over to hear some bloke dressed like a Victorian farmer saying, "Some you'll keep, some you'll kill." Being surrounded by cute pigs at the time didn't help that sentence one little bit. Left armrest was now back in his rightful place, on top of her head, blocking out the heat from the radiator. It suddenly dawned on her that just because she had managed to reach 1,000 words yesterday, even if she had to add a random tortoise at the end, this did not necessarily constitute a chapter. It constituted 1,000 words. More research was obviously needed. How many words constitute a chapter? She discovered that it depended on a number of variants. How long it takes to fill up a bath of water being one. I need to figure out who my audience is. People like me? She pondered this until she was quite sure this would not help her in the slightest, and decided she was just no, we should come to the end of a chapter. Easy. 12:24. Excellent. Lunchtime. That green zigzag is so rude. 13:01 p.m. Back to work. Youngest son all covered in glue. Are you just about to walk through the door? Was that youngest son all covered in glue, Mark?
It was, but he's in the kitchen.
All right. He's still youngest son. I don't think he's covered in glue anymore. That's the only thing. It was, she realised this, quite a luxury to be able to sit and do this or not do this whenever she wanted. Next week she was back to work. How long would the willpower, enthusiasm, chocolate Slim Fast last then? Wake up at 6:30 a.m. Leave the house at 7:45 a.m. Work. Back home at 6:30 p.m. Then write 1,000 words. Would it happen? Of course it would happen. This was so cool she would be champing at the bit to get back home and log on. A new notebook with matching pen was what was needed. She could work on the bus. The bus, a fantastic arena full of possible characters to add colour and life to her novel. She would no longer put her bag on the seat next to her or cough and sneeze so no one would sit by her. She would welcome anyone who chose or accidentally had to sit next to her. She would converse with them. She would be genuinely interested in their pending operations, family problems, and gambling addictions. This was raw material. The bus would be an abundant font of beautiful experiences and information. Was it possible that she was actually looking forward to going back to work? Goodbye, cynical traveller. Hello, new notebook and bus friends. How absolutely amazing. She was on word 2093 and hadn't even realised. Is it time for a new chapter? No, not yet. She wanted it to look professional, not overexcitable. The news had just come on. Is there anything more depressing than reality, she thought to herself. She had actually stopped watching the news for 8 years after one particularly graphic description of one particularly brutal war atrocity. And after accidentally hearing the first 30 seconds of today's, she remembered why. 2 explosions, unemployment, 60 dead, click. Give me Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot any day. And I'm making no apologies, preferring Joan Hicks and Peter Ustinov instead fictional parts. The luxury of escapism. Maybe this was what her book was all about. You can gloss over, choose to leave out, and choose to put in anything that makes you happy, forget, or avoid reality. But reality can be hilarious and sometimes more unrealistic than unreality. She decided that she would pick funny parts of reality mainly and leave out the rest. If she could see the funny side of depression, eating disorders, and addiction, then all the better. And she was allowed to, because they belonged to her, and she could make of them what she wished in her book. New Year's Eve. She wondered if this would be a good time to start a new chapter. She looked at her word count and decided it wouldn't. Some of those little stars would do. Maybe New Year's Day would be a good time. She could include some coloured font or something. Youngest son, all covered in glue, was still in bed. 13-year-old back from the cinema was that smaller boy but same age as house. I wonder if there will be any good films on today. The Christmas card had fallen over and she had nearly mustered up enough energy to pick up the last bit of ripped wrapping paper that was in the middle of the living room floor. She looked around the living room and quickly decided to stop doing that. I wonder what hobbies I would take up this year. Last year it had been cross-stitch, sock creatures, knitting and mosaics. Cross-stitch was good. She liked the idea of making her black and white doodle sketches out of it, but hadn't actually got around to doing it. She had managed a green tea, a red L and a dodgy Georgian house. She had knitted about 20 different coloured squares, which she was going to sew together to make a blanket. 15 years later, everybody, look behind me. That took about 15 years. Most of the time it was in the bottom of a drawer, but I'm proud of that. I forgot I wrote about that. That's exciting. Moving on. She hadn't got around to finishing this either, and the joke about it being a blanket for a Barbie was getting old. She was going to enter her sock creatures into an online competition, but hadn't got round to it. But she had a nice picture of Steve, her best sock creature, as her avatar in her depression forum profile. She was going to have an exhibition of mosaic heads, but hadn't got round to it. So she bought loads of MDF, had it all cut the right size, and left it in a huge green garden waste bag behind a single chair in the living room. She gave her best mosaic head away for Christmas and later regretted it. How could she forget her obsession with making toilet roll puppets and putting them on YouTube? I will finish my book this year. That will be my new hobby. Left armrest had decided to woof so loudly that the laptop nearly fell on the floor. Apparently next door was having a satellite dish installed, all their windows cleaned. There was definitely something happening that required a man with a ladder. The unchristmassy Christmas tree was next to the French windows, which looked out onto next door's garden, which contained the man with the ladder. Left armrest hurled himself at the window and ultimately the tree. It was time to take the unaesthetic plastic Father Christmas and the untraditional, unsentimental decorations down anyway. She was always sad when the decorations came down, mainly because she could blame wrapping paper, toy packaging and tinsel for the complete mess she lived in until then. That noise is not window cleaning. That noise has woken up youngest son all covered in glue. That noise has launched left armrest into an unchristmassy Christmas tree again. And most importantly, that noise has stopped me from writing my book and has made me turn the TV on and start watching Murder, She Wrote. And to add insult to injury, Jessica Fletcher was sat by a swimming pool with a laptop writing another bestseller. That is definitely a satellite dish installation noise. No self-respecting window cleaner would cause so much havoc with a noise like that. 11:14 a.m. coffee. Well, not technically coffee. Little sachets that make instant cappuccino, accompanied by a little chocolate sprinkle shaker. High five. Making an instant cappuccino with little chocolate sprinkles meant a trip to the kitchen. Mistake. Most of her concentration now centred on what she was going to have for lunch. She fancied baked beans on toast with a ton of cheese on the top. This was useful because this presented her with the conundrum regarding how to spell ton. T-O-N or T-O-N-N-E. Neither had been awarded a red zigzag, so both were right, presumably. Maybe one was American. She could either Google it or just put both in. She put both in. She knew she would get sidetracked onto the depression forum if she went online. 3,003 words without as much as a by your leave. She then treated herself to half an hour surfing the net, and then realised it was 12:51 p.m. and the hunger pangs were real. Left armrest was also beginning to squeak. This usually meant he needed to water the hexagonal planter in the garden. So I'm not going to go on to chapter 3. I'm just going to leave it at that. Don't forget to go and see Mark over on the Crafty Nihilist and subscribe because we're nearly at 1,000. Bye.